We are excited to have Nishino America as our title sponsor for 2026. Nishino is driven by ingenuity and R&D, bringing innovative chemistry that works. They back every product with a customer-focused expert who knows your field and is ready to help. Stop guessing and find solutions today at www.nichino.net. Thanks again for Nishino for sponsoring the show and this episode of the Specialty Cropcast.
Welcome to the Specialty Cropcast on Pomes and Stones. Join us for real conversations with farmers, agribusiness owners, and industry experts as we dive into farming, products, and the business of agriculture, all from the people who know it best.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Specialty Cropcast from the Nishino Studios. Today, we're going to be talking about a little bit of something that is going to be coming up here, more importantly, as the growing season starts for us, which is irrigation, and kind of how we can get some better ROI on what we're doing and maybe get a little more knowledge on what we're doing with it instead of, just running your water because you think you need to. So we're going to be talking with some folks from Verdi, out of British Columbia. So thank you guys so much for calling in. I know it's a little bit in the afternoon there for you. So we have Val and Eugene. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to come talk to me.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Hello. Glad to be here.
So obviously water is really important. And my quick time that I spent out in California, I think a lot of the talks out there were focused on water usage, especially when you're limited. Here in Michigan, we're not as dependent on the water compared to a lot of the other regions of growers that listen to the show, because we get that rain. But there's other places that are heavily dependent on your water, and exactly when you're limited to how much you can use, a program like this is super cool to be able to kind of track your usage and make sure you have no waste. But before we get into exactly kind of what the program is and what you guys do, let's talk to Eugene a little bit here and learn a little bit about you. So what did your path look like, with education and how you ended up here at Verdi?
Yeah, so I started out mainly doing really getting into the deep of plant science. I thought I would be maybe even a researcher in plant science. I took that career path, studying like how the plants react to the environment that it's around. Did some studies in grapes, really understanding how grapes respond to deficit, developing flavor, developing like sugars and acids and all that stuff, and really did the technical route there. I found that like interesting, but I wanted to get more practical use out of that. And luckily, I did a lot of in-field work, worked really closely with farmers during that time, and got a good exposure to, at the time, what was relatively modern ag tech. In a way, looking back on it, it was kind of proto Verdi. We were doing a lot of soil moisture and controlling irrigation, but we were doing it all manually and trying to get that proper effect on grapes. After that, I went into vineyard management. I spent about 3-4 years there locally in BC doing vineyard management, really got familiar with how people are doing it there and really got my hands on it. However, we were very manual about the whole process, and it allowed us to get really close to the grapes and really understand what we're doing there. But I did see a lot of inefficiency in the process. And then when I saw Verdi come up, they said, "Hey, we want to work with somebody like you." I thought this was a great opportunity, and August 2024, I joined the team, and it's been great ever since.
Nice. So you actually had some good hand-on experience where you were able to kind of not only just, live in that and see exactly where those inefficiencies were, which obviously can really build some motivation for yourself to be like, wow, this is something that I've seen firsthand that needs some serious improvement. And luckily, there's already some folks that were kind of getting behind that idea. And I'm sure there's plenty of folks out there that also realize that there's definitely some lack of that. So at what point was it during your time during the grapes that you realized that tech was going to be part of your future in your ag career?
Yeah, I'd say having that first taste early, 2016, 2017, during my studies there, like looking at those tools, I understood that if I was to be going into like this career path, I would really want to utilize this tech in some way. And I came across in my time as a vineyard manager, I came across a few hurdles that we'll talk about a little bit later, that are very common for a lot of growers, and primarily that's budget. And when I saw Verdi and what they're doing, I thought, hey, this is awesome because they're actually respecting that restraint, and we're able to actually get some stuff done within that. Yeah, within what farmers can actually afford to do. Because yeah, we put in some pretty crazy systems, and they can do some really good stuff. But we did pay a pretty penny for what we had on site. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. It's almost like when you go to the universities and they'll do studies on certain chemistries and how much they work or what these rates are, and then you actually hear this, the dollar amount behind it, and they're like, oh well, it was $400 an acre for that spray for us to do that, and you're like, oh well, that's that's cool that it worked at that rate, but that's unrealistic for a normal grower to be able to
Non-starter, yeah.
use that.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It just
yeah,
takes the air out of the room.
exactly.
So obviously, one of my questions here was, how does the background that you have change with how you work with growers today? But you kind of just answered that because, you know the realities of what all the growers face and in the hardships that we're on with the cost of labor, cost of inputs going up, that, we're looking to be, if you can't get those costs down, because you have to have the labor, especially in specialty
Yeah,
crops. And you're not going to
exactly.
get away from the chemistries because you have to have them to produce this gorgeous fruit or vegetables or any crop that we have. You have to have it. And so what can we do to combat that? And that is be more efficient with what we're doing. And so that's a lot of exactly what you see. And I think a lot of manufacturers of different products are realizing that as well, whether it's, you're using drones, you're using autonomous stuff, smart sprays, intelligent spray, everything's going toward that tech. And I think it's time that growers kind of trust it, because everyone kind of has that, well, what if it breaks down? What if it doesn't work? And there's, I think that we're kind of past that curve. I feel like we're here toward, we just need to trust it and then kind of start adapting this and see what it kind of looks like. So that's why I'm excited to try this on our farm, because like you said, we've mentioned before, we'll get into it. We were always, before we had either the Rainbird gauges where you had to go in and you just set the times and they rotated. Then we moved on to Bluetooth, where you can drive up to the valve, connect it to your phone, change it. Also cool, but you still have to drive up and down your farm and connect to all of that. So that's one of the cool things that we'll talk about in the future. The episode here is how that all is available just on your cell phone wherever you're at coming up.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll bounce over to our next guest here. Val, thank you so much for coming in. Obviously, you just took a back seat for about 5 minutes there as we
That's
got
all
to know
right.
Eugene very
This is
well.
fun.
Yeah, so let's learn a little bit about you and your background in ag and how you ended up here at Verdi.
Great, thank you. About 12 years ago, I left a career in technology career in Silicon Valley, and I wanted to be part of the technology revolution that was emerging in agriculture. And so for the past 10 years, I've worked in irrigation efficiency, irrigation automation, and most importantly, the boots on the ground component to make all that work. The other thing that I've learned is importantly is that when it comes to irrigation, it's always a right now problem. And the responsiveness, the reliability, all of those things are critically important.
So what are your guys', I guess I forgot to ask Eugene this, what are your roles
My
specifically?
role is I'm the director of channel partnerships. And so I'm putting together relationships with the irrigation dealers that provide the valuable function of hydraulic integrity, irrigation design, the valve, the installation, the system, and also the local presence, the local market, the boots on the ground to be able to sell and support our products.
Yeah, and myself, agronomist and account manager, I'm the one talking to growers on a daily basis, making sure that they get the customer service that they need, as well as providing when they do need it, the agronomy advice, trying to translate all those metrics that we're collecting, all the data that we're collecting into something actionable for them in the field.
All right, so if I have any problems, you're the guy I need to call then.
Exactly.
Okay. So what have you learned, Val, about how growers make decisions when it comes to that new technology?
Well, I think the most important thing that I've learned is that it's a trust decision, not a technology decision. They have to trust you. They have to trust that it's going to work. Um, when I first got into ag, someone told me that their grandfather used to say, the way you make an ag sales guy go away is ask him for the university research. And
So what have
so,
you, okay, go on.
trust. It's the most important thing. The other thing is you have to understand that most farmers They're welders, they're fabricators, they're veterinarians, they're plumbers, they're electricians. They have a huge amount of capability, but they don't necessarily have the time. And so, being straightforward and being precise and definitive and performing on what you say is really important in this audience.
So if you have somebody who's kind of on the fence, or if someone wants to check it out, do you guys have somewhere, or is it just purely like online on a YouTube video where you can show somebody exactly how the system's going to work and the benefits it brings them?
Honestly, the best would be to hop online, talk to us about what your farming situation is like. We don't want to just apply a blanket solution. We want to make sure that's really tailored to your farm, and that would require us, yeah, having a little chat. We'll show you what the software looks like, what it means in real world. We'll be showing you real world data there from an account. Where somebody's actually growing grapes in this case, and that'd be the easiest way and the most like tailored to your situation. If you're lucky enough to have a Verdi grower in your area, we can go down, have a site walk. That'd be fantastic. And alternatively, we do have some resources online there for growers to peruse and kind of get an idea of what we're about.
Awesome, awesome. So we've talked a lot about you guys so far here in the first couple minutes. So let's learn more about Verdi and what you guys have to offer. So for someone who's hearing about you guys for the first time, break it down for us.
Yeah,
If I could offer this, if you think about traditional irrigation automation systems, we fit where maybe Netafim or Wisecon is too complex, too expensive, and Rainbird entry-level devices can't do enough. So we fit between
Mhm.
those two ends of the spectrum, and there's a lot of farms that fit into that. And we have a price point that scales from the small trial plots to large multi-hundred thousand acre projects.
Those are pretty big. That would be quite the product. But if you're putting out, if you're putting out that much and covering that much ground, why not take a deeper look and make sure you're not losing any money when you're operating at that size?
Yeah.
So that
Well,
definitely makes a
well,
lot of sense.
Well, the other thing is that when you're moving water, you have the cost of moving that water, the energy that's in that water, and the nutrition that may be injected in that water, and the labor to manipulate the water around, right? And so automation gives you many more levers to pull, many more hours in the day to irrigate. And so with the Verdi simplicity of our technology and the price point, different size farms and different complexities of operation can avail themselves of the different benefits of automation.
So how is this different from a traditional irrigation system?
well, I mean, the big difference is that we're not really asking growers to rip out what already works. We want to respect the hydraulic integrity that was designed on the farm, or if the grower had installed it themselves, what's already there. At a core, we retrofit onto valves, onto pumps, drip lines, and possibly even the sensors you have there already in use. And we just add a level of verification, add decision support on top of that, add control and monitoring all in one platform so that the growers don't have to switch between 5 different apps to see, their control, their sensors. They have it all in one place. And a lot of traditional systems, a lot of the ones that Val mentioned, they just stop at control. They think that control is all the grower needs, but you really need, that's only half the job. And to go that extra mile to do the other half is proving that the irrigation actually happened. And that's where we see Verdi really creating that gap. And we're proving that irrigation's actually happened as the growers intended. And once we can establish this is the right way to do it, you know that it's working properly. And as soon as you see any deviation from the site, then that's a reason to go down and take a look.
Yeah, I would say that the most control that we kind of have here on the farm, as you guys talk about it, is turning your well on and choosing which zone it goes to. And essentially that's it. I mean, you choose, I guess, with your emitters, the size of your drip. We use a lot of drip line here in Michigan. So, you choose your distance and the rate at which it pushes it out. And that's about all the control you have. So, that's super cool to see that. And that also, which a couple questions here that we're going to get into are about the simplicity of it. How easy is it to retrofit? And the other one was, is it a full replacement? Which it isn't, right? So you can take that stuff that's already there and implement these things here and make big change on your farm.
Exactly. Um, it's at one level, it's a retrofit. But if somebody did want to go that full mile, we fully support that full replacement because you're not going to retrofit a ball valve. You're going to have to put an electronic valve on site. So at
Hmm.
that level, it might be a bit of a replacement. But in that case, it's very simple. We retrofit onto existing electronic valves, onto your pumps, and on drip lines if we're going even that detailed. We'll connect it across your whole ranch, make sure that your schedule as you want it, or maybe even help suggest a better schedule, can get automated. And then the alerts are automated to your phone, and within minutes, you're retrofitted for control. And yeah, it can be done really without a technical background. The replacement option, I really like it because pretty much every farmer is a plumber at some level, and the replacement, I guess, option that we have, it can be as easy as make the cut, put in the unions, glue them in, and you're good to go. But if you're retrofitting, it's also very simple. You're connecting two wires and then scanning a QR code, and you're good to go. Yeah. It's pretty much a no brainer. It doesn't require retrenching, no rewiring, no full system replacement. It's what every grower I think really needs.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think what I'm set up to get is we're going to be connecting to some soil moisture probes in the ground. We're doing some, I think, some flow sensors, and just to monitor exactly kind of how much we're doing, where it's going, and then measure like you're talking about, see where it's going, how far down soil, the moisture. We'll check the capacity to make sure that we're not just leaching it through or overwatering. Especially when you get into apples, that can be later in the season when you're trying to irrigate for different varieties that need different water at different times. Being able to control that at the push of a button on your phone is huge, especially if you get caught with a pop-up storm. And or another application of that would think about would be sweet cherries. Here in Michigan, if your sweet cherries, or I guess anywhere, if your sweet cherries get too big and then you get a rain right before harvest, they'll crack, and there goes your fresh fruit there. So it's pretty cool to be able to gain that control, which is something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that
So what are
irrigation,
some of
that
the go ahead.
that irrigation precision, as you mentioned, apples, really important for bitter pit disease.
Hmm. Yeah, bitter pit is directly related to size of the apple as well as crop load. So, if you're running that irrigation, you get too much or too
Driving
little,
too
you can really
hard, yeah.
change the size of your fruit. Yep. So what are growers getting wrong with irrigation today that you guys see for someone who's not utilizing this system?
I would think that growers don't recognize the simplicity of the retrofit, right? So if you acknowledge the benefits, why would you wait, right? Someone once said to me that if you opened a farmer's brain, a little thought bubble would pop out that says maybe next year. I think the other thing that we have to recognize about irrigation is irrigation's hard. And I think the other consistent thing I've seen is that the systems tend to be underperforming from an overall pumping efficiency program. I asked a colleague at a very large vineyard operation, worldwide vineyard operation, do you guys have a program for pump testing, for testing pump efficiency? And he kind of hung his head and he sighed and he says, we don't know what pump efficiency is around here. And he says, it's even worse. He says, I can never get preventive maintenance dollars for a pump test, but I can always get emergency dollars for a failed pump in July. Well, a failed pump in July is the worst possible thing that can happen. And that's why you do a pump test in April, to prevent those kinds of things, right?
Hmm.
So, right, that's the other part of the do-it-yourselfer mentality that's inherent in farming, is a lot of that maintenance is, well, we fix it when it breaks. But out of the right, if you think about irrigation as a right, that's an infrastructure investment where a new well might be $1 million, and pump efficiency and overall irrigation efficiency, right, with monitoring, you can calculate, right, when we need to flush lines, whether our filter performance is correct, we're backwashing too frequently, too infrequently, and can also inform us, hey, we've got a disruption in flow. We better get the pump technician out here to take a look at what's going on.
So would you say that the biggest inefficiencies is just lack of knowledge of what's going on then, essentially? And then it's probably a little terrifying when you first hook up to the system, which I'm sure I'm going to get a little shock. But when you
There's
hook up
there
to it and you
there
see
usually
more
there's
in
usually
depth of
some
what's going on.
Yeah, there's usually some sort of surprise.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's gonna be us. We have a little bit of an underperforming well that was traditionally made for just a cherry block that moved in a couple, just zones across the field at the same time. But now that we're doing the apples, we have each variety on different zones and different sides of the driveway. Our farm is pretty much split 50-50 on each side, and some of them have slightly different soil on each end. One side's much sandier than the other, and so it's nice to be able to, instead of just watering everything equally, to be able to control that separately, which has been huge for us, and
Well,
probably
that's
will be
another.
as we look to the future.
That's the good point about the soil you make in the future. As the price of technology is falling, being able to design systems to irrigate around soil variability is now more feasible than it was even just a couple of years ago.
And honestly, it's with the soil moisture aspect of it, it's how would you like would you be able to balance your books if you didn't know how much you had at the bank? If you only worked on cash flow, would you really be able to know how much you have and how much to plan for? It's not really feasible. Soil moisture, I think, is a key part of it, but I believe it is just one tool in the tool belt. And it's a really good place to start, I think, for a lot of people.
Do you guys know, off the top of your heads, how much irrigation is still manual out there compared to automated?
Yeah, I think the figure is somewhere between 90 to 95%. They might even be those farms might even be set up to be automated, but people have just stopped short of going the full distance of automating and use those expensive valves, and they still turn them by hand. They still use those three-way hydraulic valves, and they'll turn them by hand just because there's not enough trust, or it's broken down at some point. They don't have the dollars to fix it.
Yeah,
Well,
you
you bring
you
it
hate to
up an
tie that back.
interesting. That's an interesting point, Eugene, in that my observation is that a lot of ag tech faces what I call the 18-month corrosion point. At 18 months, they're not using anymore. Well, why aren't you using it? Well, it's broken. I called the guy and he wouldn't call me back, or I forgot to log in, or Frank was taking care of that and he moved on to a different company. And so there's a hand-holding period where you need to make sure you get ingrained into the operation and provide benefits. And one of the ways you provide the benefits is thinking and speaking in terms of what I call the water value chain, right? Irrigator, ranch manager thinks in terms of gallons per minute or runtime hours. An agronomist or a viticulturist thinks in terms of fractional inches or gallons per vine or gallons per week. And the people that are worried about sustainability or compliance think in terms of acre feet. Not to mention your metric units just north of the border. So inherent in this managing of water, there's all these unit conversions that make it very difficult. So if we're going to get flow meter data for compliance, well, I can make that available to the viticulturists in gallons per vine. That's just math. I can help make that data more ingestible for more people within the organization.
So when you guys find that you find when people first hook up with this system, that are they underwatering, overwatering, or are they just guessing, in a ballpark, and they're just landing where they're landing?
Honestly, it's a bit of all three, but I would say overwatering is the most common. It's farmers are really good at knowing when the plant is not getting enough water, but it's very hard to tell when the plant is getting too much water in the sense of like you're not drowning it, but you're just adding too much, and the plant, it's still doing okay. Uh, and but maybe you're washing out too many nutrients, and then you're gonna have to apply more fertilizer more frequently. In real fields, like they have different soils, different elevations, different crop densities, crop vigor, all this. So applying a unified schedule to it, you're gonna end up overwatering and underwatering some section of it. It's just bound to happen. Um, Putting monitoring in your field to figure out what's actually happening in your soils is one way to help mitigate that, and possibly redesigning your field if you really need to. But we have ways with some of Verdi's, um, I guess, like patented row level technology. We can really get precise with it. But most farmers find they still want to irrigate at the block level, and we can just really narrow down what the right schedule is for you if we combine monitoring and control in that.
Hi, I'm Dave Felker, an independent AMSOIL dealer. On a farm, the work doesn't wait. From planning to harvest, your equipment runs long hours in heat, dust, and demanding conditions. And when downtime hits, it costs more than time. That's why farmers trust AMSOIL synthetic lubricants. AMSOIL offers a full line of synthetic products for virtually every farming application, including engine oils, transmission and gear lubes, hydraulic fluids, greases, and filters, all engineered to help protect wear, heat, and corrosion. AMSOIL synthetic lubricants are designed to last longer than conventional oils, helping support extended drain intervals where recommended. That means fewer oil changes, less maintenance downtime, and more time your equipment stays in the field doing what it's supposed to do. From tractors and combines to specialty equipment like fruit shakers, AMSOIL supports dependable performance across the farm. And for specialized needs, AMSOIL offers food-grade grease and biodegradable hydraulic oils supporting safe operation, environmental responsibility, and reliable equipment protection. For more information, please visit my website at synthetics.com or Dave at wearesynthetics.com. And thank you.
Yeah, you talk about over applying, or just you wouldn't just do a broad application across anything. So you tie that back to your a basic fertilizer program back in the day. I mean, we're still guilty of it here. In the cherries, we don't do grid samples on all of our soil tests every year and then go out and variable rate, because these trees are here for 30 years. So if you start doing that, that's a huge chunk. We do other things like sap sampling, and so we kind of know where the nutrient level is, and we always do a rotation of soil samples. That's important.
Yeah.
But, if you tie it into a row crop guy that would just go out and apply all of his 10,000 acres at the same rate, there's a lot of loss there, especially where you don't need it or you need more in a place, and so it's a very similar thing that you can tie that to just with your water. And it's especially important for us here in specialty crops for sure, like a couple points that we've mentioned before. But if it's working so well, why is this not flying off the shelves everywhere? What's the holdback you find with most?
I think our competitor is not other technology. Our competitor is, this is the way we've always done it.
Mm, you always hear that. Well,
Yeah.
why change? I mean, we've been doing it like this forever.
That's it. Don't if it
Ain't
It's
broke.
not broken, don't fix it, right? And that totally makes sense, right? It's we see I see this and the people who have been really successful with our technology and other ag tech. It's getting those young farmers to a point where they feel like they have 30 years experience already. And it's for the farmers who do have 30 years experience, it's putting that gut feeling into numbers and then allowing them to really make concrete decisions instead of being like, oh, this year maybe feels like this year, so I'm probably going to approach it this way. No, you just you see those numbers, you apply that gut feeling to those numbers, and you say, hey, this is how we're going to approach it. If it happens to line up how that other year was, perfect. If it doesn't, you have a way to anticipate and actually engage this year more actively instead of being reactive.
Yeah.
You touched a little bit earlier about trust, right? And because you see it all the time, like you mentioned, Val, you get into a technology or into a new program, and then there's turnover within the industry, or they don't support that technology because they've given up and the next things come out and they've moved on to it. And then you're stuck with an expensive system and your hands are tied. And then what do you do when it doesn't work anymore? You just go back into the old manual turn because, that's tried, true, and again, trusted. So how do you guys try and build that? Is it like you said, the hand holding where you're taking that time to really integrate your guys' self to make sure that they're supported, and then for the future as well? Or how do you break through that trust barrier?
Well, I think it's that hand holding. That's been my formula. That's been proven to be successful. The other thing is, right, once I said that water's a right now problem. If the phone call comes and the answer is, maybe next week, sorry, not good enough. They're going to call someone else, right? So you got
Hmm.
to be on the ball when it comes to that. I think the other thing is that yeah, trust and responsiveness are going to be a big part of that.
Yeah. And we see that working with local partners and local dealers as a way to also help out with that. Um, Verdi does a lot of direct support with the farmers, but we want to work with people who know the area, people who know your farm, not just the farmer, but those people who maybe even design your irrigation to make sure that what we're doing is right for you and that's the perfect solution for you. That's how we slowly build that trust with farmers. And
Right.
also,
So it's
a local sidewalk doesn't hurt as well.
right.
Yeah, the other
So
thing
so
is
it
that
goes.
we're perfectly happy to teach your people how to do it. I say to that to farmers all the time. If you have an intern that wants to stand over my shoulder while I do the installation, I'm happy to teach them how to do it. Right. And
Mhm.
that's the other thing is that as we go through this technology transition in farming, part of the sweet spot for the farmer to use technology as a competitive advantage, maybe competitive imperative, is the ability to deploy and repair and be fast with technology, right? We all know what the farm shop looks like. There's welding, there's fabrication, it's dirty, it's muddy, maybe hydraulic hose making capability. The future of the farm shop, there'll be a little corner bench with a soldering iron to do repairs on cables and keep the technology going, right? We have proximity sensors on tractors and automated tractors. The role of the farm shop is going to evolve as we go along. And I think big farming and smart farmers understand that, right?
Yeah. So I think we've spoke about how great it is, but what everyone's going to want to know while listening is how much money is it going to save them? Where is the ROI? What's the payback on this? Because nobody wants to, like we say, invest into something and then it maybe almost pays for itself. And like we said, you lose that support. So we've talked about how you guys give that support, but how much is this saving people in the long run?
Yeah.
Well, maybe if I could give you an example from when I was farming, this is some time ago, I was farming pistachios, part of a large farming operation, and we were starting to automate the irrigation, and we were not automating to eliminate labor. We were automating to give us more precision and more levers to pull in the execution of irrigation. And as we did it, we taught our irrigators were the staff we kept on 365 days a year, and we kept them busy all the time. And as we automated, we taught them how to do installation, we taught them how to do repairs, we taught them how to fix the surprises that we learned along the way, bad pressure here, too much pressure over there, all those kinds of things. And so we were able to really keep the cost down by involving the existing staff. And so what happened is with their free time, we equipped them with loppers. So they were cutting off suckers and that lowered our overall contract labor cost. Other things happened over 18 months time. In that time, the amount of acreage an irrigation team could cover doubled. The quality consistency up, yield consistency up across the board. And so, right, just the benefits were across the entire organization.
Yeah. And in terms of like what Verdi has experienced directly with its customers, it really depends on how that operation has been handling irrigation labor in the past. But we're seeing anywhere between, on average, to 50 up to 90% labor savings in terms of time on irrigation spent. That's irrigator labor and management labor saved. I really like the example of here in the West, a lot of farms, especially in these more like desert climates where I'm situated in, uh, people are doing 20 irrigations a year on average, possibly even more as we go further south into California. And for every irrigation that they do, just simple control is saving them maybe 20 minutes for every irrigation. Getting that extra level with sensors on top, you're adding at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, to that 20 minutes. So that's an hour and a half to 2 hours per irrigation saved for every irrigation you're doing. Imagine what that adds up to across the whole year, across all your farms, across all your valves, and imagine what that adds up to, over the lifetime of a device like this, right? So it's easily paying for itself within a year. Easily, depending on how expansive we get, really bigger installations pay off way faster. But really, most installations are paying off within a year, and with labor going up, getting more expensive, that's just going to be more true as we go forward. And that's not the only place where ROI comes from. Talking about fuel savings, water savings if you're paying for it, fertilizer savings, and what Val mentioned, better yield and quality overall, and more consistent crop stress management. It's it's a pretty no-brainer, but labor is definitely the primary number one saving when people switch over to any irrigation automation system, especially like Verdi.
If we do a lot of we're starting to do more and more fertigation on our farm, is that doesn't have any effect if you're putting a lot of nitrogen through that into that water, that doesn't have any effect on sensors or anything like that? It just purely just helps you, and that's even another part. If you're not even just running your water, but you're putting money into that, doing that fertigation, you better hope you know where it's going, and you better hope that, if we're the way way we're currently do it, the way we did it last year is we just have a positive displacement pump that just takes it and puts it in, and we know how many gallons it pumps in an hour, and then we set that time frame over that amount of acreage to set exactly what we're doing. Probably a very basic system. But man, imagine you're putting all that money in and you realize that it's already there, and you're just flooding that area with it, and it's just it's an over application. So being able to gain that control has huge benefits. Just
Yep.
that then you add the inputs into it, and you talked labor, you talked about your water usage and your yield improvements. But the more you think about it, the more ideas pop into your head about how much more beneficial this is. And then
Exactly.
another quick thought that popped into my head is that we in the cherry industry here have a couple big processing plants, and what's obviously across the country, and then probably in Canada as well, is the increasing focus on where your water is going after it's being used. So this is a
Yeah.
little bit off script here, especially in the processing facilities, wastewater. So have you done any work on, because I know that we spend a lot of time at our places monitoring how much water is going out, where it's going, and then taking all these measurements in order to stay compliant with all of this stuff. I think I see a huge opportunity for people to gain a lot more control with their system using your guys' product here.
Yeah. So if people are putting in a probe that can like see the bottom of their root zone, we can definitely see how far the water's going. And I usually recommend if you really want to get a handle on, am I actually overwatering? You just want to measure a few points just below your lowest point or where you want to be pushing your water. That way you can be confident that it's not fully leaching off site. And then also monitoring the flow that's coming into your blocks, into your farm as a whole. Those are very important metrics to be looking at, and those are what those regulatory bodies are going to want to know for sure.
Yeah, and
I don't know
that also includes tank levels, reservoir levels, pond levels, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
we have multiple, like what do you want to call them? Like a lagoon that holds that water while it's getting treated, and then in Michigan here, we're able to use some of that water out in the field as irrigation in the surrounding areas. So obviously that comes with its own risks to run a system like that, and obviously being compliant and knowing exactly what's going on is at the utmost importance of doing that. So gaining more and more control over that, especially as they try and crack down on regulations and make it tighter on the amount of water you can put out and make sure that the water's clean. And doing so is going to be more and more important going into the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if that's happening over in Michigan, but over on the West Coast, more and more farms are getting metered, and
Hmm.
farmers are some farmers are up in arms about it. Others are just accepting it for what it is, and yeah, I don't know how I really feel about it, but I know that it's allowing farmers that extra level of knowing what's going on their site, and really it gives them some. If they're monitoring that on their own, it gives them records to show, hey, you're actually overcharging me for the amount of water that's coming on site. There's something wrong with you guys, and that way they can defend that if they need to.
Yeah, talk about protecting yourself. What an opportunity just, in that moment to be like, hey, this is it. This is what we did. That makes say they think there's a break on X day. You can probably look back exactly then and find out how much was applied that day, where it went,
Exactly.
and all that. So do you think that the future is moving toward total autonomy? Like how far before everything's spraying, and then I could be sitting here talking to you guys, and then I could be running a sprayer, running my irrigation. Won't even have to be out there anymore.
Well, I think there's an important point here, right? There's a lot of people running around saying that AI is going to solve all this, but the reality of farming, especially irrigation, there's tribal knowledge about the operation of the system that might be somewhat opaque, right? And so there will always be that boots on the ground element, right? The tractor might need a hard fist on the dash before it'll start, right? All that kind of nuance of farming, AI is not going to sort that out, but it's also a hindrance to automation and more precision because we've got to be able to figure out how to account for that stuff.
Yeah, we spoke briefly in the last interview about how you can punch in, say, you have a certain pest that you have in a fruit, vegetable, whatever. You could give AI your region. You could tell it, you want to put together a spray program from July, or from April to harvest on my sweet cherries about protecting it from bacterial canker. Boom. And it can spit something out for you, but does it exactly know all of the little, like you say, the little nuances or this or that, or make adjustments in time? No, it doesn't. But maybe, so maybe crop scouting is jobs in danger at some point in the future. But, you just can't, you know, it's so difficult because it could possibly technology, it really could be super beneficial in the future, but also you almost can't trust it. Technology's like they always say, technology's great till it's not, till it's broken, or something falls apart on you.
Well,
That's
we all
exact.
we
And then
all
you'll
know that the soil moisture sensor is gonna get hit by the tractor.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, we've seen we've seen where our valves come up out of the ground. People will run them over. We have, when the lines come up and they have, a 90-degree T, those always get turned or, ran over because someone turns too sharp and they drag the tire over and crush it. And then your water's shooting out into the air and, oh, so many fun things.
I on that original question, I see a future of combined human and automation. I don't think we're ever going to have purely zero human farms, especially field crops, especially specialty crops outside. Maybe in greenhouses, maybe something where it's super hyper controlled. But even then, you're still going to have a human in the mix. And we don't even want to we're not here to replace, as Val said, we're not here to replace the irrigators. We're not here to replace the workers in the field. We're there to make their job twice as efficient. They can get more done. They can feel confident about what they're doing, and they're spending time on the high value tasks that actually matter instead of day to day grinding out, turning on and off valves, all running up and down the lines, like confirming that every single line is on. You just have those few metrics that say this is working properly. You can cut those trips in half, maybe even more.
Yeah. So
Well, the
automation's
acreage.
not. Yeah, so I wouldn't say, yeah, so it's not replacing decision making, but it's more improving on what you're doing, which in turn I guess breeds better decisions for your farm, especially in tighter times as they are currently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Did
where do you
the
guys go ahead?
I was gonna say, yeah, did the car replace like the need for a human to be there, or like the tractor replace a human on the farm? Possibly some humans, but those people just went to go work somewhere else. And then the people that actually own the farm continued to be more efficient with their work. Yeah. So, yeah.
So where does irrigation rank compared to the other risks on the farm, whether it's labor, rising cost inputs, also weather risks also.
Well, I think the reality worldwide is that agriculture is threatened by labor, water, climate. And technology is the big part of the solution to that. At one point, when I first got into the automation business, I thought, well, it was clear that being able to execute automation was a competitive advantage. And today, maybe it's a competitive imperative. Maybe we're going to see a cycle of turn where people that are left behind. Um, and so there's changes that are afoot in farming, and technology is part of the answer, and it's challenging. Irrigation is hard.
I'd say it's one of the highest leverageable, like leverage controllable risks on the farm. Honestly, it touches pretty much every aspect. If you don't have water on the farm, you're not growing anything for the most part. Weather isn't controllable. Irrigation is. So if irrigation's your limitation, if water is your limitation on site, your weather isn't compliant for you, you need to have irrigation on site. Otherwise, you're not growing anything. I think California is one of the biggest producing states in the United States for agriculture, and the majority of that is irrigated. Without irrigation, it would be a desert. So I think
Hmm.
that kind of answers that question right there.
Yeah, I think they're the most diverse growing state in the country or in the United States, and I think Michigan is the second with access to with water. What's one thing growers should stop doing immediately?
Val, do you want to take this one or?
Um, I would say stop ignoring your utility electricity bill when it arrives and just paying it. Learn more about it. Learn energy rate programs. Learn rebate programs. Learn the cost of pump inefficiency or irrigation inefficiency.
Yeah, like you could see that because when you, like you said, when you have to have the water, you're just running it. You turn it on, and then you kind of get that bill a month later, and you don't really think, oh, well, it's because I ran it this many times. You just know that, that address is connected to that well, and that's what you're getting charged for it. And, if you think more about that in the moment or become more educated on what's costing you and what and why, and there could be just easy fixes on deficiencies to save you some big dollars.
Yeah, there's some easy fixes, easy money that's available looking closer at that.
Okay. Eugene, what's one simple upgrade that makes the biggest difference?
Adding pressure, like monitoring to your valve, hands down. It it's if we're talking about irrigation automation, I think that's the biggest difference because flow meters are too expensive for most people, uh, and having that control tied with, hey, the pressure is hitting that right pressure range. I know, like, if I know with clean lines everything's good, I'm hitting 60, 40, 50 psi, whatever it is, you can more or less assume it's good to go. Uh, and yeah, I would say pressure makes the biggest difference.
Well, when I think about pressure, if you know that you have adequate pressure, you know that your flow should, you can trust that your flow is, pretty much correct. If you have low pressure, then you got to break somewhere and you're blowing it out onto the ground. So
Break
those kind of come
somewhere, too
hand
many
in those
valves
kind of come
open.
hand in hand. Exactly. Yeah, or you have multiple spots open at the same time that shouldn't be, or you're just running too much that your well can't handle. Time to
Yeah,
Yeah,
time to go spend $1 million
Eugene's
on a
right.
big well.
Eugene's right. The visibility on what's actually happening, right? Did the irrigation event actually happen to plan, right? Reconciling
yeah.
Mhm.
irrigation.
I think
Yeah,
there's too many stories that I hear where they say, "Oh yeah, I thought I was irrigating 8 hours, but turns out it was only 6." Either that was an irrigator issue, or that was a line broke somewhere, or maybe they didn't measure their DU and they just don't know where they're putting out water. So yeah, it's easiest. Yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah, like I said, a couple times, I'm super excited to get this program onto the ground and see what kind of savings it can bring us on our farm. Maybe we come back, next year after it's been in for on the farm for a year, and we kind of, bring some stats from my farm, and we could talk about my experiences on kind of how the first year went and the program, and share that with everybody and get your guys' take on some improvements I could make, if any.
Let,
So, you know,
let's set up a booth and do it on the farm.
oh, there we go. Yeah,
On farm
yeah, you guys
podcast.
come. There you go. We're trying to take this show on the road to different farm shows and do stuff at people at booths at shows also,
Nice.
which is a cool way to kind of meet other people and spread the word about the podcast and our message to kind of shine a brighter light on the specialty crops grown across the country. So if you guys ever have a good farm show somewhere and you need there's usually 3 other guys with me, but they all are busy tonight. So you just got me tonight solo. So but it's all good anyway. So thank you guys so much for calling in. I know it can be hard to schedule something in. We bounce the days around, but I appreciate you guys calling in and your knowledge. And like I said, looking forward to adding the system. So one last thing is, if somebody wanted to learn more about Verdi, where should they go? How can they get in touch with someone to start the process?
You can visit us at Verdi, VERDI ag.com. verdiag.com.
And then, are there any social medias you guys would like to plug while you have a microphone?
Yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn,
Besides
Facebook, Instagram.
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
pretty much any
Awesome.
of the socials. Yeah,
Yep. So yeah, this podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. The video versions are online and YouTube and on Spotify as well, as posted on Acres TV. We also do clips on Instagram and TikTok. So I'll tag you guys. I'll tag Verity in all of them when the clips come out from this episode. So like I said, thank you guys so much for coming in. This has been great. We'll catch everybody on the next episode of the Specialty Cropcast.
All right, thanks.
awesome. Thanks. It was a pleasure.